Okay. Good morning and afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a webinar supported and brought to you by iClear. And it's my privilege and pleasure to be able to support this, and our pleasure from CriticalArc's perspective to bring this to you as well. The topic of the webinar is the future of Clery, leveraging technology for enhanced compliance and VAWA alignment. So there's a lot of evolution of the thoughts around how VAWA impacts Clery, and then also other factors around technology. My name's Glenn Farrand. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CriticalArc. We deliver the Safe Zone solution to universities around the world that has a complete solution with regards to safety, security, and well-being. Does have implications for Clery. And we work with organizations here in the States and internationally. And we have an esteemed panel here today, and I'll just quickly just name everyone, and then we'll have our panel members introduce themselves, just give some background about their institutions and their experience in this area. So I'll kick off with Adam Cooper, who's a Clery Compliance Director at Johns Hopkins. Adam, over to you for a quick introduction to you and your organization.
Great. My name is Adam Cooper. I am the Senior Director of Clery Compliance for the enterprise of Johns Hopkins. And I've been here for about 6 years. Prior to that, I was a major case investigator with the Department of Education, Clery Division.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate that. Looking forward to your contribution. So we have Chief Jack Moorman. Chief, you're at the interim at North Carolina A&T these days, but obviously you've had a wide range of experience. Over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I started my career with the City of Raleigh Police Department, captain with Raleigh PD. Did 15 years after that with North Carolina State University, retired in 2019 as police chief. And this is my third time filling in as interim chief, currently at North Carolina A&T University, largest HBCU in the country. Great place to be. Certainly enjoyed my time here. Also teach Clery compliance courses and have done a number of Clery assessments for institutions.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate your time. And Steve, Chief Steve Gahagans is from University of Arkansas. I appreciate you joining. Just you had an international flight, got back late last night. So over to you for an intro.
Thank you. I serve as the director of the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And Clery compliance somewhat reports to me. I'm not a Clery purist. However, it does report to me, so I have the opportunity to kind of get engaged and kind of try to understand it as more of an administrator. And of course, I have some responsibility in that regard. And with that, you know, when you have to travel internationally because you have campuses, like in our case, we have a campus in Rome. We also have a campus in Mexico. We have to sometimes be up to speed as to how they're reporting, what they're doing, how they're handling certain things, and make sure that they are in compliance like we are expecting them to be. And so we work with them closely and so forth. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Steve. Really appreciate it. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a whole bunch of questions for our panel here. And then towards the end of the webinar, should we have time, we'll open up to Q&A. So there's a Q&A feature within Zoom that will allow you to enter questions. And as we get the opportunity, we'll pose those questions, if anyone has any, to the panel. So kicking off, and we'll start with you, Jack. Clery is always evolving. It's part of the factor around Clery. There are different threats and scenarios that evolve over time. Technologies actually can be the source of some of that, and there are other things that impinge. And then obviously the impact of understanding of VAWA is important. So how's the definition of and the understanding of VAWA crimes evolved since Clery was established, and what implications does that have for future reporting requirements?
Absolutely. So certainly Clery itself has evolved immensely over time. Again, I left Raleigh PD in 2006 and came to the campus law enforcement world Clery was very different than it was, than it certainly is today. And we know with VAWA coming about in 1994, but it was really the Dear Colleague letter. It was really the 2014, 2015, when VAWA really had an impact on Clery, and certainly made a difference in the statistics we counted, the focus that we had. But I think with the reauthorization in 2022, that even brought about certainly some very significant changes that I know some institutions that I've seen are having, or maybe not where they should be at this point, with the change of definitions, with the restorative practices that came about as a result of that. Looking at the campus climate survey is now out. So I think really my focus would be, if I'm at an institution, would make sure I really focused on what are the things that changed as a result of the reauthorization in 2022, and are my policies, are my procedures current? We have a tendency, when I say we, I'm not talking about one institution or the other, to focus more on the numbers and things of that nature than we do the content of our annual security report. But we always say, make sure you say what you do and make sure you do what you say. And I think we really need to, particularly our policy statements, have we changed them, and have we changed our practices to accurately reflect new definitions, new components that came about in 2022.
Great, thanks, Jack. Over to you, Adam, and any perspective you have on, I guess, VAWA's impact on Clery compliance and the requirements there.
I think, in general, with the inception of VAWA, it created an environment to the benefit of a campus community where a public safety mechanism works in conjunction with other mechanisms at the university, specifically the Title IX component. I think it's a misconception that, public safety writes the annual security report. Public safety does put it together, but for me or my office to write something that's untrue, it makes no sense. I'd rather get it directly from the office that does that, whatever it may be. So I think, again, with VAWA, with Title IX offices, student conduct offices, I think it changed the dynamic of, let's just get numbers from those two offices, to how do we work with those offices when these things get reported.
Appreciate that. And Steve, with regards to this first question, how are you seeing the interplay between VAWA and Clery at the moment?
To Adam's point,
requirements with Clery.
Okay, yeah, to Adam's and Jack's point, I had an interesting situation being a director of the department where a lieutenant that reports to me kind of handles the Clery side of things and so forth. So in time, we had an individual that just retired, and he had been with our department for 45 years, and he was the one working in our Clery area. So upon his retirement, to the point of, well, it now has to move just from one department, where I felt for many years it was really being handled by one individual, one department with connections to several of the other departments on campus, where now the focus is we have to move in a direction where we more formalize a committee or an action group surrounded by Clery, because I think, and it has been said over and over, is greater than one department, one division. So we are actually experiencing that now, where we're having to pull a team together, where before, because of the expertise and the knowledge of one individual, he was able to carry that for so many years. But now that he has gone on to a better place, I hope, the rest of us are left to deal with this. And so with that said, I think moving from one particular officer to other partners at the campus, and taking a look at the policy statements and things of that nature is paramount.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, obviously when you have a discontinuity in the staff, it's obviously also an opportunity to put those types of committees and groups together. I'll hand this next question to you, Adam, and it's around the impact of technology. And what have you seen with regards to organizations and institutions and the impact of technology on their ability to collect and report and analyze data? Have you seen any trends there, or any examples, maybe examples of how you're doing that at Johns Hopkins as well, utilizing technology?
I can't speak for my institutions. I'll just speak for myself.
Yeah.
You know, when I started in Clery in 2005, we were kind of in a space of, you know, we sent out emails, but the main way people, you know, it wasn't as ingrained as it is now. So, you know, we would actually put it on the cork boards at different, you know, residence halls. And, you know, this was before kind of, you know, notification systems became a thing, and they kind of grew historically over the last 20 years with Clery. You know, I think in specifically marketed towards universities. Universities breathe differently than other institutions. And to tell you the truth, one institution is not a right fit. It's not always the same fit. So if you have a giant institution with, you know, 80,000 people spanning the globe, it's different than a smaller university which may have 5,000 people total staff, in fact, in one space. And I think you really see that when you know, you read things like, you know, the old handbooks or even the new handbooks. You know, they write a campus like a square, right, with streets around that square. That's nonsensical. That doesn't happen in real life, right? So you have to adapt as your campus grows and as Clery grows. There is no expertise in Clery without constant practice in doing it, which is, you know, if you took me in 2008 and put me right here, right now, I would know half of what I need to know. And that's just, you know, that's the growth of an industry.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And there's certain opportunities and also challenges whenever you consider, you know, introducing technology for this. It needs to fit with your organization, and you know, that's evolving along with the regulations too. So yeah, it's always a moving target. So Steve, from your perspective, understanding, you know, you've got overall responsibility, but you have a team that focuses on Clery. How have you changed? Have you seen technology change the way, you know, institutions are collecting and reporting and analyzing data related to Clery, and maybe even specifically VAWA, if you do anything there?
Well, we've kind of done it the traditional way, where we would contact the offices and get the reporting from them as to how our statistics look and so forth. However, we are in the process of looking at what technology is out there. Are we currently using platforms that really can help the different offices, such as Title IX, our Student Accountability Office, and all of us kind of streamline some things where technology is very helpful and so forth. It's kind of like we have grown to use a cell phone. Phones now can do about everything you need it to do. It can be a flashlight. It can communicate in all types of ways. It can be entertainment for you. So we're trying to look at systems whereby there's a coordination between the different offices, where we are speaking the same language and we're walking what we talk. And so I think some of the technology is there now. Is just really exploring what it is, how it can be used, and how it can kind of bring us all together in kind of a platform that each of us understands, and that moves us in a direction where we're making better improvement than what we're doing today.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. And Jack, from your perspective, the use of technology in this area, what have you seen working well, and how is that changing?
So Steve and Adam have done a great job covering a lot of the uses of it. One thing I would like to mention too, though, is sometimes it's easy to become over reliant on the technology. When we started, we were going through, again, 20 years ago, we were going through everything by hand. We were collecting it manually. So in recent years, and when I say recent, not not just a couple of years ago, but for some time, we've had the ability to use our CAD, our RMS system to gather Clery stats as different companies have been more aware of Clery and looking at how they can better help us to track. But I think the thing of it is there's no substitute for looking at those cases in detail, and we can't be overly reliant on that technology. We've got to look for any reports that have been misclassified. We've got to really dig into detail, and we also can't overly rely on those systems where things are reported to us via technology. There are a lot of times where our message is pick up the phone and give us a call. Make sure that we know, sure, it's great if we can collect our stats at the end of the year, but these incidents involve people. And sometimes when we reduce it so much to our focus is such on statistics and making sure that we have documentations, every one of these cases represents an individual who has been a victim, if we're looking at VAWA, who has been a victim of or survivor of dating violence, of domestic violence, of stalking. And how can we use technology to better give them a sense of security, to better help protect, keep them safe? To me, that's the real place where technology comes into play. Okay, you're a survivor. We've got the report. We've taken appropriate action from a law enforcement purpose, from a sanctions perspective. Now, as you go about, we've got a safety plan in place with you. As you go about your daily routines, what role can technology play in keeping you safe and alerting us? That's why when we're looking at the wearable devices, the apps that can instantly contact us, that can be used to show if we have a suspect in a case who's been readmitted to campus, that we can see from a technology perspective, if we've got license plate readers in that vicinity, if we know if the offender comes back into the vicinity where you are. So to me, it's important. Technology is an important part of collecting statistics and analyzing data, but we've got to focus on how can that technology prevent future incidents and keep our campus community and our survivors safe. And I would say the other piece I would add a little bit about the analysis. We've always looked even at trends. There are certain times of the year, there are certain times where we're going to see an increase in these type incidents, whether it's VAWA offenses or from a university standpoint, mental health issues. We know that week after Thanksgiving, when students have been gone, they come back, they now realize maybe they've had some family conflict when they went home. They realize within a week, it's time for the final exams. They're not prepared. It's just a downward spiral. And we use the analysis of those cycles and trends to make sure we have more resources, and we put out information about our mental health resources, our survivor resources for sexual assault, domestic violence at the time of year, not only when it's an emphasis for those months or what have you, but at the time where we're seeing the most incidents. And I think that analysis of data and trends is important.
Yeah.
Glenn,
Steve.
can I add there, where when we pull that information in, the technology is evolving to where we're getting sometimes instant communication as far as to suspicious activity or reporting of crimes such as VAWA and things of that nature. The data's coming in. We want to analyze that data so that we have a better feel of where we want to put our resources and so forth. But one of the challenges that I see, and one thing that we're looking into, is when this data starts to come in, when people are reporting using this technology and so forth, how well are we interfaced with the other departments on campus? And are we appropriately communicating that data to them so that they know? And so that's something that we're looking at right now. Is one thing that we can get that information because we kind of have the safety app, our student safety app, where they can give us data that we would analyze. But I am kind of wondering with my staff, how are we collecting that information, and then how are we sharing that information with our partners on campus to where we can make better informed decisions and everyone's in the know.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'll add to that. I can't agree with Chief Mormon anymore. I think he's spot on. In my experience in this industry, no matter what technology you have, its primary driver and the primary use is for emergency notifications and timely warnings, right? And for situational awareness, things of that nature. I think trying to comply with Clery in terms of the other annual security reports or statistics, it would be at that point you're almost you're almost like doing QuickBooks, right? And it'll never work. The Clery in and of itself, a report is not reviewed once, right? A report is viewed twice, 3 times, 4 times, right? And then at the end of the year, because this is not a TV show where it ends after an hour, right? This is things develop about the case. There was another victim, right? In a case of an aggravated assault, well, there was another victim. We didn't know about it. When did you know about it? 3 months later, right? So when you're going to count it or analyze the report, the report should develop itself from what you know at the time, then what you know at the end, right? For counts and things like that. The technology that exists, and I don't think they would create. It's still at the end of the day a person business. This is a person industry, right? Hiring a Clery person is not easy. It's a very tough thing to do. It's a very, very, very specialized field, and there's not a lot of people who do it, and those that do tend not to move around that much. But again, at the end of the day, what you're going to have is a compliance with not a knowledge of one person, but a knowledge of one person that spreads out to the office so that everybody has a functional knowledge of Clery, even if they're not considered the Clery expert at your enterprise.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Adam. It really is a people thing when it comes down to it. And I think, Jack, I just wanted to dig in on one point you made there, and it's the takeaway I had from you is there's the reporting requirements with Clery, the collection of the data and so on, timely warnings, and then there is ensuring that you as Director of Public Safety, Chief of Police, and your team is providing the most safe environment and doing the optimal job as far as managing the safety of the campus, but also potentially, protecting victims as they reintegrate. And the utilization of technology there, I think, is as you mentioned, things like license plate recognition for people who might have been identified as a stalker, for example. That's especially where technology can come in. From the perspective of Clery, where does the kind of the reporting and the action get specified to Clery, and then where does your discretion and trying to implement best practice as far as victim protection on an ongoing basis start? How far does Clery go as far as determining and defining how you do ongoing victim protection?
So I think is really an integration in many cases. Again, I don't want to take up too much time on this particular question, but if you look at each case is different, but each individual case is going to trigger various components and teams that we have in place. One thing that's critical is to make sure your officers who are responding to calls have more than just a preliminary knowledge of their role as a campus security administrator. We go into different institutions and they say we've trained all our officers as CSA. CSA training is great, but how I always like to do an in-depth 8-hour training for every agency I am, where you understand the mechanics of Clery. You're not just your responsibilities as a CSA. So I think it all starts with that officer who's responding to the incident, recognizing, okay, this is a Clery incident. And then that starts your immediate process by a call to the sergeant, a call to the command staff, what have you. Okay, this is a Clery incident. What do we need to do right now from a timely warning, emergency notification, what have you? If not, then let's document why we don't. And I think why we don't, we all do a good job of documenting when we do send those timely warnings or emergency notifications. We also need to make sure we document when we don't and why we don't, because that's hard to explain afterwards. But anyway, so that is what is triggering your often these are also going to spill over into your behavior assessment or your threat assessment team. So if it's a domestic violence, if it's a dating violence, if it's a stalking, that element's going to come into play. And that's something else that starts immediately. And so you're tracking, whether you use Maxent or some other software, you've got your case report in your system, in your RMS, your CAD that's flagged. You've got your Maxent report initiated. You've got your threat assessment behavior intervention team coming into play, working on that safety plan. And then, like I say, you've got that technology as the other piece of it. Okay, let's put the offender's tag number into our ALPRs. Let's make sure that as part of the safety plan, this individual does have a wearable device. They have an app that they're hopefully giving us voluntarily letting us know where they are at any given time. So if they activate that emergency button, instantly we know not only that it's an incident, but we know the details of that incident. We know who it is. We know where they are, and we can respond with that and with that knowledge of, okay, this is our survivor from yesterday. Here's our offender information. Let's be cognizant of that as we're responding.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Jack. I'll throw this next question back to you, Jack, noting the comment you made about being involved in training, and maybe it's a very quick question, this one. And how do you integrate or address VAWA specifically in Clery training, or how does that go together typically, and how do you do anything specific with your teams as well?
So as I said, again, I'll make this one quick. I do 8-hour training for all our public safety personnel, and I make sure we go over the definitions. We specifically go over VAWA amendments and the definitions of the crimes, and how they relate to that. I think another important part of your team is to know who's on your team. And when I say that, when I was chief at NC State, we might have 100 officers from different municipal and county agencies who are working our home football games. That's our Clery geography. They are our CSAs. So how do we get a handle on that? And of course, when they turn their paperwork in for payroll, they would complete their CSA training with us at that time, or and those two were connected. So I've seen some institutions who miss individuals who clearly would be CSAs. So I think you've got to think about not just our full-time officers, our contract security, our off-duty officers working for us, things of that nature. And I think that training, not only is that training important for your campus safety personnel, but also for your administrators, for your chancellors, your presidents, and their cabinet. For to truly be effective, they've got to have an understanding of the details of Clery and the responsibility there.
Right. Brilliant. Thanks, Jack. I'll just open up this question a bit more broadly as well, and to you, Adam. What have you seen as far as organizations better integrating, say, Title IX, Clery, and VAWA awareness, and different elements within the organization that may have responsibility for these?
Well, I think a lot of times, what happens and what should naturally happen is, since if you do a responsible employee training, let's say, and then a CSA training, and you do them at different times, it tends to confuse. If you're not in this, space for a living, it tends to it's confusing, right? What goes here and what goes here, and what goes on both. It's like, a Venn diagram almost.
Yeah.
So what we like to do at places is make sure that those trainings are held kind of in conjunction with each other, not a dual presentation, but one, segment A goes and then segment B goes. The reason for that is there's going to be questions, right? There's always going to be questions about, well, what happens if this? What happens about this? And you can give examples. Now, the right answer is always report everything, right? That's the right answer. But you make sure that the people that you're training, who I think, a lot of times, people take for granted that when you work in this space, others don't have expertise in this space or have never heard of it before, right? Or never going to hear of it until next year's training comes up. So it's important to have those like offices, student conduct, Title IX, Clery, train in conjunction with each other so that there's no mixed messages about what needs to be done.
Right. Brilliant. Thanks, Adam. And Steve, what do you see at Arkansas in your experience with the coordination of training, or at least the requirements, and different parts of the organization responsible for things like Title IX and Clery?
Right. What I see is going to get much better. We had a couple of issues that really brought this to light, how important working with your partners is. And so we will be doing a lot better job of that. But I kind of look at this, some of us may have heard of the red slice theory. We know what we know, we know what we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. So when you pull these groups together to do joint training, much like has been described, it helps us all in the sense of understanding where we all stand and what we're looking at. Someone that really specializes in Clery may not quite understand all the things that's going on with Title IX or that's going on with another particular area. So the cross training is going to be important. The format for those universities that do not have a committee per se, I think it's time to really start looking at that in a very serious sense. Sometimes you got personnel and talent that can handle a lot of work and they can carry the weight, if you will. But now we're entering a time that is too important and too vast and too large that we are going to have a lot of people with some expertise at the table. And so for those of us that were maybe not forming in those types of ways, we need to take a more serious look and do that. And I applaud Jack when he says he's done 8 hours of training with all of his public safety staff. A lot of us send a couple of officers or 2 commanders or something like that to the conferences to go get that training. But by and large, to be able to do online training or face-to-face training with our public safety staff, where they have a very comprehensive look at what Clery is, the definitions, what is VAWA, how did this all come about, I think is resonating with me as very important than maybe it had been in the past. So I appreciate that. Jack, I am curious though, how do you do all this training with some of the outside forces that come in to assist you? Do they go through an 8-hour program, or do you have kind of more of an abbreviated program that you would expose them to?
So we have a more abbreviated program for our officers who come in. When I was at state, we would typically have a session where we would bring them all in at once. So we also, of course, had our CSA training video. So if we couldn't get everyone collectively then we would say we had our CSA training video set up, so it was part of our online learning module for the institution. So we would assign them that video as though it were a class, and again, then they would have to complete that class to be our employee. And again, we've got, you know, for our contract security, you know, we work very well, and we've got great contract security. Certainly the, well, I don't want to mention any specific names, but a very large organization, and they do a great job of doing their Clery training for their personnel. And we just reiterate with their leadership and management that they've completed that before they come to our campus.
Great, thanks, Jack. And I guess this steps us on to the next question. It's about the use of technology in general, and I'd open this up quite broadly. Jack, you just mentioned about having essentially an online learning tool for certain circumstances for CSAs and so on. And this is an open question to the panel here. What have you seen working across both the technology spectrum and the spectrum of requirements with Clery? So for example, all the way from reporting to notifying to training, especially, I think, in the various people who need to have awareness. What have you seen as far as best practice with regards to training, and try to make it as efficient as possible and as effective as possible for your organization? So I'll hand this broadly to the team here, but I'll hand it to an individual if we don't get a response.
Well, I'll step in with when we talk about the introduction of technology and the evolving improvements technology is making and everything. You know, when you think about Clery, if you want to just bring it down to basic terms, it's making things more supportive and helpful for individuals to be able to report crimes, and especially crimes that they feel they've been a victim of or they haven't been supported with, and that sort of thing. So I think the technology, when we have things in place that will give them the ability to quickly notify us when something's not right, or to report a crime, or to alert us if they feel they're in some type of emergency, has been very critical for our ability to be able to respond and assess those situations and grow as a team at the university and so forth. So technology for us has made leaps and bounds, I guess, compared to where we used to be, where that really didn't exist, where they had it right in their hand on how to report certain things and how to alert us when they were in need of assistance and so forth. And then we take that information and, as we would say, analyze it and see what we can do better and how we can put that, make sure that's in our reporting systems that we're required to report and so forth.
So Steve, in general, you would see this is just an additional channel of information that, you know, hopefully makes it easier and more, you know, more effective to get input, but it doesn't necessarily replace anything, but it's in addition. Is that correct?
I will absolutely say that it's in addition to everything we have in place, and even with our individual officers on campus.
Right.
And everything. So when you can grow from 100 and now you have 6,000 or thousands of individuals with the knowledge now and the capability now to know that they can make some of these types of reports. If they need some help, just linking up to resources and so forth, it's right there in their hand and they're able to do that. That it's very promising, and we're going to make it even stronger and better than what it exists today. You know, I'm a type of guy, okay, so we've grown with thousands of users now. Let's get that up to even more, where we got tens of thousands of users. And so it's a challenge, but it's a great tool to have for our community, for them to be able to report things quickly, and that's going to just make our campus safer as a whole.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Adam, Jack, anything you'd like to add with regards to technology usage across the spectrum?
One thing I would like to add, and I'll come back into the technology piece a back way. So once again, I go back to, we're talking about individuals. We're talking about survivors who find themselves in a difficult situation and who are sometimes hesitant to report because they're concerned about potential ramifications or sanctions against them, no matter how much we try to emphasize that our priority is on the safety of campus community, addressing these events, holding the offenders accountable. People are still hesitant to report things because of that fear of their unknown. To me, the beauty of the app is that having the ability to make anonymous reports, because so often we find it's that we recognize you as the survivor, you're struggling. Should I didn't? I'm thinking about, well, I have to go to court, everybody's going to know it's me. How am I going to focus on continuing my studies? And we want to make sure we're doing everything to accommodate those concerns, but we need to know about it in order to address it and prevent it. So a lot of times we get a lot of reports from a friend, from an acquaintance they don't want to get involved, but that app allows them to anonymously report it. They've done their due diligence. It gives us an opportunity to start an investigation, and so to me, that's a huge advantage of the technology. Yeah, I think it greatly, not just a way to report, but it increases reporting.
And then I think also it involves safety planning. When you have an app where you can check in and check out, when you can see it or say it, when you have a situation where, to Jack's point, where you can report anonymously, but also you can check in and actually set timers of when you're going to go from point A to point B as far as a safety plan once it's been identified that you are a survivor or just good practice. And when we have the ability for a person to be able to say, I want to walk to the library, and they're able to check in, and if they uh, do not, or we can see that they do not arrive, then it allows our ability to be able to follow up. And so that's so important piece of this. And so it's very good that technology is improving even more and more and more as we move forward, because now we kind of have a closer, intimate relationship with some of our community members that could be potential survivors or victims of other types of crimes and such.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, what we're seeing across the industry is the use of technology for the reintegration, Title IX cases, VAWA cases, for example, and being able to provide support for the individual. And that's not obviously necessarily required by regulation, but it's really part of providing the best possible service to individuals in acute circumstances. So it's in a related space. So as we're closing down time-wise for this webinar, I just wanted to kind of think about current changes to Clery and what we might anticipate. Question which will go around the team here. Obviously, Clery evolves, and it's important to keep your teams up to date with how that changes. So question firstly for you, Adam, and then we'll go to the rest of the team, is what potential changes are you seeing in Clery, different behaviors with how audits might be occurring, anything you might anticipate in the near future, areas of focus, and then how you might see Clery changing with different focuses, maybe related to VAWA going forward. So what are you experiencing at the moment, and where the focus might be with regards to Clery?
Well, I think, as I've always said about Clery, if you want to learn about Clery, don't read the Clery regulation. If you want to know where it's going, don't read the Clery regulation. Read the Hill, because it's when things change politically, and new regulations come up. That's what changes Clery. Everything else is just like a secondhand, analysis of it. But to really see where changes are coming, you really have to be integrated into Washington, D.C., because that's where new regulation comes. And I think one of the major changes that's probably going to happen within the next year is the addition of hazing as a clearly reportable issue. And again, we're not in the space of, I've heard people say to me, well, at other institutions, we don't have Greek life. We really don't have to worry about that. But it goes well beyond, Greek life. It's
Right.
hazing is no, is not a Greek issue. It's an issue at universities. So I think the reporting on that is going to be much the same as when other reporting mechanisms were added into Clery. There's going to be a learning period of, how do we train this out to our CSAs? How do we know what to capture? How do we know what is hazing, what's not hazing? So there's gonna be a lot of questions that arise from that, and it will make another administrative burden on universities. As the other amendments have. But I think it's something that's necessary. At in a university setting. Personally, I think it's something that makes sense to. And when I say necessary, I mean necessary to be added to Clery, not necessary regulation. I think it fits well to add to Clery versus another entity, because Clery is already Clery staff already have experience analyzing things of that nature, seeing a report and having the analytical eye of, is this or is this? So I think I think that space of Clery is probably the proper landing space for it if it ends up passing.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Adam. Very important area to have thought around. Steve, are you noticing any changes or anticipating any changes with Clery?
Well, the one thing that I guess some of this could depend on the politics of it. We have an election coming up. I don't know from a layperson's point of view, well, will this really have a significant impact? But I don't think anything will be rewound in a way that will really detract much from what we've accomplished in Clery. Matter of fact, my personal feel is that it'll get even stronger. It will evolve even more. They're going to, and I'm certain those in leadership and maybe even legislators have looked at what are the gaps? What are people saying about what's not strong enough, and being more inclusive? What do we need to do in that particular end? And I think most of us now, since Clery has been around for a long time, we just know it's best practice. So outside of the politics of it, I think we would adopt some of these enhancements or improvements and things of that nature, because it's just good practice, especially when we want to serve as our public safety entity. And I'm not just talking about your police department or security department. I'm talking about the campus as a whole, especially those that serve as campus security authorities and such. So I think it's only going to get, in my opinion, stronger. And if there is some type of pushback somewhat politically, I don't think much will be taken away, because it is good for the safety of the people that we have to serve.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Steve. And Jack, over to you with regards to changes and anything you might anticipate.
So to me, and both Adam and Steve have made excellent points. I want to go a little different direction in this. And I think what really, regardless of the legislation, or regardless of what administration is in the White House next year, we've got to focus on the institutional responsibility of Clery. And we've talked about it a little bit already today, but it is not a public safety function. It is a responsibility of the institution. And I think one thing that we recognize, those of us who deal with Clery on a regular basis, is the difference between how Title IX is treated in some institutions and how Clery is treated in some institutions. Whereas Title IX is widely recognized across the board and has the full support of the administration in almost any institution you would walk into. Clery is still perceived in many respects as a function of campus safety, your campus security, or your police department. And I think that goes back to the origins of Clery as being more statistical. Again, 20 years ago, as I think Steve or Adam one mentioned, our only notification system was email, and it would take 2 hours for email to go out. Timely warnings weren't really timely then, but it was more statistical number perception. That's why it's housed in the police department, which is typically 2 or 3 levels down in your organizational chart. When I teach the Clery class, I always end with, if you haven't read, and I'll always ask, I'm like, how many people have gone to Department of Education's website, and do you read the Clery find letters? Do you read what specifically, not what you see in the headlines, but what specifically were institutions held accountable for? If you, and also when those are listed, they are listed in order of importance. So if you look across the board, number one is administrative capacity or capability, and so you've got to make sure that it's not the police department, that the leadership, that the chancellor, all your vice chancellors are on board, have an understanding of Clery, and participate in the process. To me, that's critical. And then if you do that, if you have that Clery committee in place, not just a committee to say you have a committee that regularly meets, that talks about cases, that talks about scenarios, that talks about how they would handle particular incidents. I would create scenarios. Okay, here's, if this incident happens, what are we going to do? Are we going to send a timely warning? Are we going to send an emergency notification? Are we going to do something different? What's our notification process going to look like? And work through those scenarios. So when that event actually happens, you aren't having to say, okay, now who do I call? So now what happens next? You've got to have it across the board. And if you've got that structure in place and your institution understands the spirit of Clery, then any changes in the expectations or requirements, you'll be able to take that in stride and continue to move forward.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jack. And I appreciate you taking that more broadly and ensuring you get the most important message you wanted to get across. So I'll give the rest of the panel here the opportunity to cover anything that we think we should cover, anything you'd like to say in the area. So Steve, over to you.
Well, I would like to say thank you. I think these discussions are very important. It's nice to hear from colleagues from around the nation and their perspective on how we can improve and how we can move forward. The points were well made. And I think moving forward, we just got to continue to look at where our gaps are. And then as we identify those gaps, we become stronger. And that is attending the online training, that's going to conferences, that's having meetings and online training like we suggested. And it's these webinars. These sorts of things are going to make us stronger. So I would just encourage people to stay tuned up. And I think some things are going to change. And we just have to stay abreast of that as best we can.
Adam, what would you like to cover?
Yeah, I think it's important for organizations to always be dynamic when it comes to Clery. Constantly be reassessing, never be satisfied with what you have. You never know what's coming, as far as incidents or with legislation or whatever. Always be assessing your Clery mechanisms just like you would equipment needs. It just always be assessing, do we need more people involved in this? Who should be involved in this? I think, if you if you kept paying your taxes with old regulation, you'd be in violation of IRS, right? You have to continually be evolving the space with what fits your organization. Never let somebody tell you, well, this is how we do it. This is the right way to do it. Again, nonsensical. There's a million different schematics of how campuses operate.
Right.
What works for somebody else may very well not work for you. So make sure that it's not only a good practice, but it's a good practice that could work inside your organization.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. I think that's a great place to leave it. I think that's a great message. Constant vigilance is important in engaging as many people as possible across your organization. So I'd like to thank you all for your contribution here today as panel members. I know time is very precious. I appreciate you sharing your experience and allowing us to take advantage of that. And thanks as well to ICLEAR for continuing to support education and engagement on these very important factors. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time, and stay safe out there.
Thank you.